The room went completely silent the moment I placed a single envelope on the dining table. My older brother smirked, convinced I had finally come to apologize. My father folded his arms, waiting for me to admit I had been wrong all these years. And my mother smiled. She actually smiled, because she believed she had already won. What none of them knew was that the envelope didn't contain an apology. It contained 20 years of lies. By the time dinner ended, my family wasn't arguing over money anymore. They were begging each other not to call their lawyers. But to understand how one envelope destroyed an entire family, you have to go back to the day they decided I wasn't worth keeping. When Emma Carter, a successful cybersecurity consultant in Seattle, receives an unexpected invitation to her estranged family's reunion, she assumes it's another attempt to erase the past. But when she uncovers a secret hidden in her late grandfather's safety deposit box, she realizes her family didn't just abandon her, they stole the inheritance that was meant to launch her future. This time, Emma isn't returning for forgiveness. She's returning with the truth and a plan.
My name is Emma Carter, and if you've ever been treated like the invisible child in your own family, you'll understand exactly why I never plan to go home again. I live in Seattle now. I build cybersecurity systems for companies that trust me with millions of dollars in sensitive data. Funny how strangers trusted me with their future, while my own parents never trusted me with my own. People think revenge starts with anger. It doesn't. Real revenge starts with silence. The kind of silence that lasts years. The kind where birthdays pass, holidays disappear, and eventually everyone pretends you never existed. That was my life. Until one phone call changed everything. It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon. I was finishing a meeting when my phone vibrated. Unknown number. Normally, I'd ignore it. Instead, I answered. A voice I hadn't heard in nearly 20 years whispered, "Emma, it's Mom." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because hearing that voice felt like hearing from someone who had died years ago. She asked how I'd been. She asked about my job. She even asked if I was happy. Questions she had never cared enough to ask before. Then came the real reason she called. We're having a family reunion next month. I think it's finally time we put the past behind us. There it was. The sentence every manipulative family loves to use. Forget the past. Move on. Start fresh. People only ask for a fresh start when the old story no longer benefits them. I politely told her I'd think about it. Then I hung up. 5 minutes later, another call came. This time it was my aunt. Then my cousin. Then my older brother. 20 years of silence, and suddenly everyone remembered my number. That wasn't coincidence. That was strategy. Something had happened. I just didn't know what. Growing up, there were only 2 children in our house, my brother Daniel and me. Daniel was the golden child, straight-A student, football captain, the future of the Carter family. I wasn't a bad kid. I simply wasn't Daniel. Every achievement I earned became another reason to compare me to him. If I got an A, Daniel got an A+. If I won an art competition, Daniel scored the winning touchdown. Every conversation somehow ended with, "Why can't you be more like your brother?" After enough years, you stop trying. You learn that no matter what you accomplish, someone else already owns the spotlight. Then everything changed when I was 16. My grandfather, the only person who ever believed in me, started teaching me about computers. He told me something I'll never forget. Talent doesn't matter if nobody believes in you. So believe in yourself before anyone else does. Every Saturday, I'd visit him.
He'd make coffee. We'd fix old computers together. Sometimes we'd barely speak. Those quiet afternoons became the happiest part of my childhood. My parents hated it. They claimed Grandpa was filling my head with impossible dreams. He kept encouraging me anyway. When I graduated high school, I earned a scholarship to study computer science. I thought my family would finally be proud. Instead, my father looked at the acceptance letter, folded it in half, and said, "Your brother needs us more." Daniel had just been accepted into an expensive private business school. The tuition was enormous. Mine was almost completely covered. But there were still housing costs, books, living expenses. Grandpa quietly offered to help me. My parents refused. "We can't afford both kids." That sentence changed my life. A month later, I packed 2 suitcases, took the scholarship, worked 2 jobs, and left. Not one person from my family came to say goodbye. Not even Daniel. Years passed. I graduated, built a career, bought my first condo, started my own consulting company. Life wasn't easy, but every success felt like proof that they had been wrong about me. Then Grandpa passed away. I attended the funeral. Nobody spoke to me. Not really. My mother cried. My father shook hands with relatives. Daniel spent the entire afternoon talking about expanding the family business. I stayed until sunset, placed white flowers on Grandpa's grave, and quietly left. I thought that would be the last chapter. I couldn't have been more wrong. 3 days after the funeral, I received a certified letter from a law office. Inside was a single sentence that made my hands freeze. Mr. William Carter requested that you personally retrieve the contents of Safety Deposit Box 214 before any family estate meeting takes place. There was also one key. Old, silver, heavy, and taped to the back, a handwritten note in Grandpa's familiar handwriting. "Don't trust anyone until you've opened this box." I stared at those words for a long time, because my grandfather never wrote anything without a reason. If he wanted me to open that box before seeing my family, then whatever was inside was about to change everything.
The next morning, I couldn't focus on work. That small silver key sat on my desk like it was daring me to use it. By noon, I was standing inside my grandfather's old bank. The manager checked my ID, compared it to the documents in front of him, and then looked up at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Mr. Carter left very specific instructions," he said. "This box could only be opened by you, and only after his passing." My stomach tightened. He disappeared into the vault and returned a minute later carrying a small steel box. He placed it on the table and quietly left the room. I took a deep breath. Then I slid the key into the lock. Click. Inside wasn't gold. It wasn't cash. It was something far more dangerous. A thick brown envelope, a leather journal, and a flash drive. On top was another handwritten note. "Emma, if you are reading this, it means they finally need something from you." I stopped breathing for a second. He knew. He had known this day would come. With shaking hands, I opened the journal. The first page read, "The day your parents chose Daniel over you wasn't the first time. It was simply the last time I stayed silent." Every page after that documented years of family decisions, dates, financial records, private conversations, even copies of emails. My grandfather had kept everything. And then I found the first real bombshell, a photocopy of a trust agreement. It listed 2 beneficiaries, Daniel Carter, Emma Carter, equal shares, signed nearly 20 years earlier. I frowned. I'd never heard about any trust. According to the documents, my grandfather had created an education and investment fund for both grandchildren after selling part of his construction company. The money wasn't enormous, but it was enough to pay for college, buy a first home, or start a business. Both grandchildren were supposed to receive exactly 50%. I kept reading. Then I saw the withdrawal records. My heart sank.
every dollar that belonged to me had been transferred into Daniel's account. Luxury tuition, a new apartment, business investments, even his wedding. My entire future had quietly become his. No one had ever told me the fund even existed. I leaned back in my chair. For years, I believed my parents simply couldn't afford to help me. The truth was worse. They already had the money. They just decided I didn't deserve it. I closed my eyes. Not because I wanted to cry, because suddenly every sacrifice I'd ever made had a price tag attached to it. Working overnight shifts, living with roommates, skipping meals during college, taking out loans, all while my own inheritance paid for my brother's dream life. Then I noticed the flash drive. I plugged it into the bank's computer. A single folder appeared. For Emma. Inside were scanned documents, voice recordings, and security camera footage from years ago. My grandfather had spent decades collecting proof. He wasn't preparing an inheritance. He was preparing evidence. Then I opened the final document. It was a letter addressed to me. Emma, if your family suddenly wants forgiveness, don't confuse that with love. People who ignored you for years don't usually change overnight. They change when they need something. Don't let guilt make decisions that truth should make. By the time I finished reading, my phone buzzed. It was my mother. Don't forget Saturday's family dinner. We can't wait to see you. Seconds later, another message arrived. This time from Daniel. I know we've had our differences, but family is family. I almost laughed. 20 years of silence, and suddenly everyone wanted to reconnect. Not because they missed me, because they believed I knew nothing. They thought I was walking into that dinner empty-handed. They had no idea. I was bringing every secret they'd spent 20 years hiding. I carefully placed the journal, the trust documents, the flash drive, and my grandfather's letters back into the envelope. As I walked out of the bank, I made one promise to myself. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't even going to accuse anyone. Sometimes, the strongest revenge isn't destroying someone's life. It's simply placing the truth on the table and letting everyone else watch it destroy them.
Saturday arrived faster than I expected. For the first time in years, I drove back to the house where I grew up. Nothing had changed. The same white fence, the same oak tree in the front yard, the same front porch where I'd once stood with 2 suitcases, waiting for someone, anyone, to ask me to stay. No one had. And today, I wasn't expecting them to. I parked across the street and sat in my car for a moment. On the passenger seat was a simple black folder. Inside it, 20 years of secrets. I wasn't nervous. I was calm, because people who know the truth never have to remember their lies. As soon as I walked inside, my mother rushed toward me with open arms. Emma! She hugged me as if we'd never spent 2 decades apart. I've missed you so much. I smiled politely. It doesn't feel like 20 years. Her smile twitched. She couldn't tell whether I was being sincere or reminding her exactly how long she'd ignored me. The house was full. Aunts, uncles, cousins, neighbors, everyone laughing, pretending we were one happy family. Daniel walked over carrying a glass of wine. He looked older, more tired, but still carried the confidence of someone who had never been told no. He hugged me. I'm glad you came. Me too, I replied, but probably not for the same reason. He laughed, thinking I was joking. I wasn't. Dinner began exactly the way my grandfather would have predicted. Small talk, old family stories, fake smiles. Then my father stood up. I'd like to make a toast. Everyone lifted their glasses. Tonight isn't about the past. It's about moving forward as one family. The room applauded. I almost admired the performance. Then my father looked directly at me. Emma, your grandfather left behind enough to help everyone if we choose to do the right thing. There it was. Finally, the real reason I had been invited. He continued, Daniel's business has had a difficult year. He deserves another chance. So we've all agreed, he reached into a folder beside his chair, that it would be fair if you voluntarily shared your inheritance. He slid a document across the table, and if you sign tonight, we can finally put the past behind us. The room became quiet. Every pair of eyes turned toward me. They expected guilt, pressure, obligation. Instead, I slowly smiled. Then I reached down, picked up my own black folder, and placed it gently on the table. No drama, no anger, just one quiet movement. You know, I said softly,
I almost signed. My mother's eyes lit up, but then I opened the folder. I visited Grandpa's safety deposit box. Every smile disappeared, especially my father's. He froze. Daniel stopped breathing for a second, and my mother whispered, "What box?" I pulled out the first document, the trust agreement, the one Grandpa created for both grandchildren. I slid copies across the table. Equal shares, equal opportunities, equal futures. Silence. I pulled out the second document, the withdrawal records. Every payment, every transfer, every dollar. I calmly pointed to the highlighted pages. My college fund, my housing fund, my investment fund, transferred into Daniel's account. One by one, family members began reading. Expressions changed. Confusion became disbelief. Disbelief became anger. An aunt looked at my father. "Is this real?" Nobody answered, because nobody could. Then Daniel quietly spoke. I never knew. I looked directly at him. For the first time that night, I believed him. He wasn't acting. His hands were shaking. He had spent his entire life believing everything he had was earned. Now he was discovering part of it had been stolen. Before anyone could speak again, I took out one final item, the flash drive. I almost didn't bring this. I plugged it into the television connected to the living room. A video appeared. It wasn't fancy, just security footage from my grandfather's office years earlier. The date flashed on the screen. Daniel and I were still teenagers. The room watched in complete silence. Then my grandfather's voice filled the speakers. "If either grandchild is denied what belongs to them, I want the truth known." The recording showed him explaining exactly how he intended his trust to be divided. No confusion, no misunderstanding, no loopholes. Then came something no one expected. A second recording. My father, sitting across from Grandpa, saying words that would change everything. "Emma doesn't need the money. Daniel's the investment that matters." The room went completely still. My father closed his eyes. He knew it was over. There was no explanation left, no excuse, no lie big enough to cover the truth anymore. And then, my mother quietly started crying, not because she felt guilty, because she realized everyone finally knew exactly who she was.
Nobody spoke. The only sound in the room was the television humming after the video ended. My father stared at the floor. My mother kept wiping tears from her face, but they weren't tears of regret. They were tears of exposure. For 20 years, they had controlled the story. Tonight, they lost control. My uncle slowly pushed his chair back. He looked at my father with disappointment I'd never seen before. "So," he said quietly, "she wasn't the child who walked away. You pushed her out." My father finally looked up. "It wasn't that simple." I nodded. "You're right. It wasn't. You didn't just abandon me. You erased me." Silence. Then Daniel stood. Everyone looked at him. He looked at the trust papers, then at our parents. Finally, he looked at me. His voice barely came out. "I swear I didn't know. I thought Grandpa just believed in me more." I believed him. Not because he deserved forgiveness, but because shock can't be faked. His entire world had collapsed in less than 5 minutes. Everything he'd been proud of had suddenly become stained. He slowly walked toward me. "I'm sorry, Emma. I can't change what they did. But if any of this belongs to you, I don't want it." The room gasped. My mother jumped to her feet. "Daniel, sit down. You don't know what you're saying." He turned toward her. For the first time in his life, he didn't obey. "No, Mom, I finally know exactly what I'm saying." He reached into his jacket, pulled out his car keys, then his house keys, and placed them on the table. If my success came from stealing my sister's future, then it was never really mine. My father slammed his hand onto the table. "Enough. You have no idea how hard we worked for this family." I calmly looked at him. "No, you worked hard to convince yourselves your choices were justified. Those aren't the same thing." Nobody defended him. Not one person. The silence said everything.
I closed my folder. I didn't come here for revenge. I came here for freedom. I pulled the unsigned agreement they had prepared, looked at it, smiled, then tore it cleanly in half. The sound echoed through the dining room. Piece by piece, I placed it back on the table. I won't sign anything. I won't argue. And I won't spend another 20 years trying to earn love from people who decided long ago not to give it. Then I reached into my bag one final time. I placed a sealed envelope in front of my father. He frowned. "What's this?" "My lawyer's letter." His face changed instantly. "It contains every document from Grandpa's trust, every financial record, every recording, and every legal option available to me." I paused. "But I'm not suing you." The room looked confused. "I don't need a courtroom. You've already lost the only trial that mattered. Everyone here knows the truth." I looked around the table. Every relative avoided my parents' eyes. The reputation they'd spent decades protecting had disappeared in one evening. That was enough. As I turned to leave, Daniel stopped me. "Emma." I looked back. "I don't expect forgiveness, but if someday you want a brother, I'd like the chance to become one." I smiled for the first time that night. Being family isn't something you inherit. It's something you earn. Call me when you're ready to start earning it. He nodded. No promises, no dramatic hug, just honesty. Sometimes, that's where healing begins. Outside, the night air felt lighter. I took one deep breath. For years, I believed success would be my revenge. I was wrong. Peace was. I drove home, not to a mansion, not to millions of dollars, but to a life I had built without their approval. A home filled with people who loved me, without comparing me to anyone else. 3 months later, Daniel called. He had sold the luxury car, moved into a small apartment, started paying back every dollar he could trace to the trust. Not because I demanded it, because he finally wanted to live with a clear conscience. We talked for hours, not as strangers, not as enemies, as two people rebuilding something our parents had destroyed. Slowly, carefully, one honest conversation at a time. As for my parents, they never called again. They didn't need to. There was nothing left to say. The truth had already spoken for all of us. And my grandfather, the only person who never stopped believing in me, had given me the greatest inheritance of all. Not money, not property. The courage to stop asking people to see my worth and start living like I already knew it. Because here's what I learned. The best revenge isn't making people suffer. It's building a life so peaceful that their betrayal can never reach you again. And once you find that peace, never trade it for a seat at a table that never deserved you in the first place. The end.
Before you go, I want to ask you one question. If you were in Emma's shoes, what would you have done? Would you have forgiven your family or walked away forever? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I read as many of them as I can, and your stories inspire future videos. If you enjoy emotional family dramas, shocking revenge stories, and powerful real-life inspired storytelling, make sure to like this video, subscribe to Beyond Secret Stories, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next unforgettable story. Here at Beyond Secret Stories, every story reminds us that the truth always finds its way to the light, and sometimes the greatest revenge isn't getting even, it's building a life they can never take away. Thanks for watching. Until next time, stay curious, stay strong, and keep discovering the stories hidden beyond the surface, only on Beyond Secret Stories.